let's start off with this. Is it time to shut down regional travel across the country? Experts in Ontario are warning that movement around the province is a much greater transmission driver than bringing the virus in from abroad. So, would you guys support a shutting down regional travel?
Oh, I mean, I'll do whatever they say, but I haven't left my house in like a week. I haven't even, not even for a walk. So, like, what am I supposed to do? Just like not leave this room now? Is that the extra step I should take? I will say I'm kind of over the whole finger wagging and just that happens every day at these press conferences from these leaders, because, and especially in light of the fact that so many of them, including health officials, took like exotic holidays over the
Yeah.
holidays. And I feel like across Canada, the biggest hotspots we've seen across like Calgary, Ontario, Quebec, we've also seen the most waffling among leaders. So to be honest, I want to hear about regional travel rules? Not really, but I really would like to hear about how they're planning on solving like some of the biggest outbreak problems, long-term care facilities, warehouses, processing facilities, and how to make sure that people who are actually not feeling well, who have to go to work, are protected so they don't
Yeah.
show up at work and infect more people.
Hmm.
Right? Like, what are the answers there? Who's solving that problem?
Well, we have,
Yeah, I think that's the
we,
problem because you've got at the beginning of this pandemic, it was pretty clear, I think, because all of us were just scared to death what had to be done. And at the time, I think most leaders across this country on all levels were doing a great job. It was black and white, just put down the hammer. This is what we got to do. And for many reasons, there are some personal reasons, and then there are not personal reasons. And I just think I think the only place where we control is us. And you're right, Sin. Like there's been a lot of stop traveling and all these things, but there has been a lack of clarity from our governments. But do we even understand what sacrifice actually means? Like we can all understand why China can lock down a city of 50 million people because it's a communist country. Their civil liberties is not a thing there. Like, I don't know that we even understand what sacrifice means. This is the first time for my generation anyway, that we have been asked to do something really drastic. And we can. There's so many people out there, guys, we know they don't have choices. But for the rest of us that do, are we willing to do what it really takes? And I think the answer is no. We've been sucking really bad at it.
that's such a good point, Mel, the idea of sacrifices. And also, like, I just want to be told what to do in a sense. And at Christmas, I had this sneaking suspicion that I should have made the sacrifice to not go home to see my mom. But because I was told that I could actually do it without breaking any rules because she lives alone, and so you're allowed to you were at that time allowed to bring someone else into your bubble, and so Simon and I made the decision to drive home to see her in London. That's a 2-hour drive. 30 minutes into that drive on Christmas Day, every bone in my body told me to turn around, but I didn't. Because
why, Jess?
Because there were thousands of other people that had the exact same idea, and they were on the roads. 30 minutes outside of the city, the weather turned atrocious. The 401 was shut down in both directions, and I kept looking around and thinking at these emergency vehicles who were working on Christmas Day because of jerkwaters like me who did not make the sacrifice.
Whoa, back up. Like, why are you a jerkwater because you wanted to drive a couple of hours to see your mom who lives by herself?
Yeah,
it was the weather,
it
right?
was the weather,
was
and my mind kept going to the idea of what if something happened to us and we had to go to an emergency room, and me, this jerkwater, was taking up a bed from someone who needed it. And
you didn't take up a bed, Jess. You arrived fine.
I know, but it's all the what ifs. Hey, we got a comment that I want to read to you guys from Lynn on Facebook, and she's sort of backing up what I'm saying. Yes, I live in a small city that saw a couple cases a week. And since Christmas, we are now anywhere from 50 to 85 yesterday per day, not week, per day. We are 3 hours from Toronto and 1.5 from Windsor and 1 hour from London. So something changed.
You know what? I just want to say quickly, Jason and I'm just like processing what you're saying, Jess, and I understand it and you're correct. But Jason and I've talked a lot about the what ifs. What if back in November, the leaders just locked everything down? That means schools, malls, regional
like
travel,
across the country?
right across the country, or certainly in the provinces with the hottest spots,
Mhm.
and focused on just helping protect workers from being sick and going in. Imagine where we might be. This slow peeling off the band-aid, even as recently, just what you're talking about, at Christmas time, they were like, well, we might be doing something in 5 days from now.
Exactly. That's why I went, because I was like, no
The
one.
worst.
There was so much gray area, and maybe this is really childish, but I wish I wasn't allowed to do it. I wish someone made that decision for me.
I hear what you're saying, Jess, and there are so many what ifs. Like, what if, yes, you and Simon, while you were driving, the weather conditions were so bad. What if, thank God, you didn't get into an accident? But there are other what ifs on the other side. Like you, Cynthia, I don't leave much. And I've said many times, I've been in like phase 1.5 since March. I don't do anything, don't go anywhere. And I used to be pretty militant and judgy about the people who were going places. But something happened on Christmas Day. A friend of mine who lives in Vancouver got on a plane and came to Toronto because they were so lonely. For 9 months,
Ah.
they've been alone. They are single. They're alone. They run a business. The business has to close. And they just couldn't take it anymore. They had been isolated. They got a test. Then they bought a ticket with 18 masks, got on a plane to visit with a couple and stayed with the couple. And they called me on Christmas Day, and we talked for 2 hours on FaceTime. And they were devastated. The whole conversation was tears, and it was desperation, and it was loneliness, dangerous loneliness. And I'm saying, if you're thinking of a what if situation, Jess, that could have happened to you on the highway, I thought about a what if situation. If she didn't have any more human contact, what if?
Mhm.
What if the next phone call that I hear?
So
those are the things that
so
I'm
what are we
wrestling
saying
with.
though? Yeah, and that's a very and listen, that's a very real reality for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are probably nodding and seeing parts of themselves or people they know in that story. So what is the question now is, so do we lock down? Like we had the Atlantic bubble. It seemed to work for them for a long while. There's now a curfew in Quebec. So are we saying now that you're going to have to go like Italian style? Remember back in the day when they had their immensely restrictive lockdown and you needed a letter to prove that you were either going to the doctor or to get groceries or the pharmacy. And so do we need to do this? Like to your point, Jess, and you want to just be told what to do. Enough waffling from all the political leaders on all levels of government. And do we have to lock it down for 2 to 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Because see, to me, we're just dragging this thing out.
Yeah.
If we just did a lockdown, why are we
there needs
dragging
to be a
out 2 or 3
decisive action.
weeks
The
into
problem is
2 or
people
3
who live
months?
in remote areas, right?
Yeah.
The problem is people who, really do need to travel, and hopefully there's nuance in these things. But yes, I think a decision needs to be made. Again,
Do we deserve
particularly
nuance?
I think people in remote communities in, let's say, any one of the provinces that are hard hit, I think that they would argue you do need a bit of nuance. I'm hearing stories of people in Quebec who, had a complicated situation where they were renting a car and a car broke down and they needed to go visit a family member who needed help and they got hit with a fine. I mean, there needs to be some understanding of people's situations. But yeah, I think ultimately we do need some leadership and some decisive leadership, and we needed it weeks ago.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
people were going to the malls, people who were going outside of their region. Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I will say when it comes to the other side of this, when it comes to leaders, and if any of them or their people are watching the show, I think that there are 2 places where we know that outbreaks are happening. It is movements through households, and it is in workplaces. And so we can only do what we can do. I can't control what's happening in a workplace, whether I have to go to one if I'm an essential worker or if it's my boss. But right now, as we speak, there is the RCMP that is doing an investigation on a massive meat packing COVID outbreak in Alberta where someone has died. And so there is this component of, are companies still putting profits over people? That's where I want my government to step in. If there are people dying because they don't have a choice but to go to work, or if they take a leave, like this is where I don't have control. I can control if I only go to the grocery store. I can't control if people are being forced to go to work in really dangerous situations. So like leaders, do something.
Control is the key word here, Mel. I mean, like, obviously we have no answers. It doesn't seem like we have any control.